Going good. We're getting a little better every day. Got a long ways to go. Glad that we don't play next weekend, but wish we had another 15 practices just because it's been fun to work with the guys and they are improving.
So much of what BK has talked about, and even the offensive coordinator, was just the foundation laying aspect of this. Coming from pro ranks, is it welcome for you to kind of build as well with them?
Yeah, I think any time that you go through, like, this is a process, right? And the building part of a process is fun. And right now we're at the ground level of that process, and we're just trying to establish everyday habits that grow into traits. And we're working through that every day.
How is that dynamic different, though, from...
Oh, I got you. I'm sorry. I misunderstood your question. I think the biggest thing that's different is you're dealing with all different levels of experience of guys playing, right? I think building the unity of a team and building the locker room, I think those things aren't a whole lot different. But certainly the football acumen is different, right? And you're trying to build that along with the techniques and fundamentals needed.
Matt, go ahead. Go ahead, Wilson.
Matt Wilson, from the Advocate. We've seen B.J. Ojilari as kind of maybe like a stand-up outside linebacker. That's not really a position he's played, I think, since he's been here. What do you sort of see for him in that role, and what about him maybe translates well to that spot if that's what he's going to be doing?
Yeah, to be honest with you, it's not that far off from what he was doing. I mean, he was a defensive end in a two-point stance, and in our scheme, he's similar. He's a defensive end. He's just playing out of a two-point stance. At times we ask that guy to drop. At times we ask him to rush. We rush him a lot more than anything else.
Mike Scarborough at TigerBait.com. Can you talk about your pass rush, going off of what Wilson was asking, and specifically the younger guys, whether it be Savion Jones or Quincy Wiggins? What are you seeing in them, and how much they might be able to rotate in, or are they a long way off?
No, you know what? That's a great question. We're still working through that. I mean, we're 10 practices in, and we got a long way to go. But I've seen great growth in Quincy. You got to remember that he just enrolled in school 2 months ago, but he's improved a bunch. Savion's really blossomed. Excited about both those guys and what they can be, but they're both working and they're both growing. Not displeased with either one.
What have you seen from the right here? What have you seen from the safety unit and just the depth that y'all have there with experience and then young guys as well?
Yeah, it's been good. Coach Cook's done a good job with those guys. We got good competition in that room right now, and those guys are pushing each other and getting better. And as we progress, I've seen those guys play things tighter and cleaner. Not where we want to be, but certainly it progressed a lot over the past 3 weeks.
Just kind of talk about your room a little bit. Obviously, it's a position of need, development, et cetera. But what are you seeing in those guys that gives you hope towards the fall?
Well, number one thing is they're willing workers, willing learners. They're willing on the field. They're not scared to put in extra work, and that's the first thing, right? And there is some talent, right? They wouldn't be here if there wasn't some level of talent. Maybe not a lot of playing experience, but there is some talent. And, with willing guys, we'll get something out of them.
Just seeing you run around during practice, having a lot of high energy, what do you want to see out of your guys each and every day?
Yeah, I think just that. Like, that's the first thing, you better be able to run on defense. You better be able to play with positive energy. You better be able to focus when you're tired. And that's really what we're striving to do.
Coach Riley from the Daily Advertiser. I was sort of curious as to how important you think the starts of your practices are, because it seems like you guys kind of do this pseudo gang tackle drill, and I was sort of curious as to how important that aspect is for you guys.
Yeah, that's a good question. Every part of practice is critical, obviously, but we try to set the tempo with two things that are really, really important: the ability to run and the ability to tackle. So that's the whole point of starting practice with those two things. Just pursuing the football and then finishing on the football.
Hey, Coach, Jacques Doucet, WAFB TV. Can you give us some insight working with Coach Kelly on a day-to-day basis, his attention to detail, maximizing each minute, second, and so forth?
I tell you what, I told him the other day, it's easy to coach under him in this way. Everything's defined, right? The vision's defined, the workday's defined, the attention to detail that you need as a program's defined. And to be honest with you, as assistant coaches, that makes your job easier. Very little guessing, right? And I've been at some places where you kind of feel your way, right? Here you can tell Coach Kelly, number one, is obviously won everywhere he's been because he's got a great plan and a very detailed plan. And that makes it easier to coach.
Matt, down here again. One of your linebackers, just Micah Baskerville. Where's he maybe at right now as he kind of comes back for another year, but maybe seems to be a little bit further down the rotation?
Yeah, Micah's improved. He's got to keep improving, and he will. I really don't look at it. I told those guys, and don't read too much into who's running out there when the first group goes and who runs out there with the second group right now, right? Because, don't look at where you're at in the line. The reality is all that matters is when you line up against Florida State, and we're going to need more than 11, I can promise you.
Hey, Coach. Glen West with LSU Country. Obviously with such a big piece like Jarek Bernard Converse out right now in that outside corner spot, just talk about some of the guys you guys are rotating in and just what you have liked about the outside corners so far.
Yeah, I think Mekhi Garner has improved immensely from last week to this week. We challenged him, and he's gotten better. It's given opportunity. I mean, Jordan Toll's a guy who hasn't got to play a bunch of corner, and now his name's called, and he's answering the bell. Demarius, another guy, opportunity rank. So, I hate it, but at the same time, it's created opportunity for other guys, which is great.
Chessa Boucher with WVLA Baton Rouge TV here in Baton Rouge. Your introductory press conference, you talked about you couldn't miss this opportunity to come to LSU. Is it more so because it is a challenge going from the pros? I know that you coached in college as well, but returning to college.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors, right? I mean, you got an elite place, you got an elite state of talent, you got an elite head coach, you got elite tradition here on defense. So there's a lot of different factors. And then, quite honestly, it is exciting to be able to be in the process of building a defense.
I'll try to make this a long question so you can think about an answer, but everyone talks about the detail with Brian Kelly, and you just referenced it as well. Is it collaborative when you talk about a plan, et cetera? Are there things that you bring to him, or is it really like this is what we're going to focus on today, and it's narrowly defined? How would you describe his detail?
That's a great question. So very open to ideas, but at the same time, there's a definite roadmap. Does that make sense? So, I mean, whether it's the day, a practice day, the vision in recruiting, the vision in nutrition, the vision in teaching, the points that he wants to hammer home with the team, it's very well defined. Now, does he listen? Absolutely. Okay, but at the same time, he's got a definite roadmap.
As you're trying to build your culture on defense, is there any guys that's really stepped up as a leadership role?
We're still working through that part of it. There's some guys that have stepped up as an accountable guy, and to me, the first step of being a leader is you got to be accountable. A guy like Greg Brooks has done a great job. I mean, he's stepped in, he's been solid, done a great job. I think you see him improve every day. He's one of those guys. Mike Jones is improving. We got a lot of guys improving. And as they show improvement, they become more comfortable, and you see those personalities come out. Okay, but we are building through that, and I think that's a process as a unit.
Coach, right here, Ojilari from the Daily Advertiser again. I was sort of curious as to how Coach Steeples has worked with this cornerback unit, given how, there's not a ton of depth there.
Yeah, that's the one great thing about Steeps. Like, put a guy in front of him, you go roll out there, he'll coach you up. I mean, he loves to coach, he loves to teach. I don't think it matters who's out there. As long as you have a helmet and a uniform, he's going to get you ready to practice and play.
Actually, a follow-up on Coach Steeples. I think he mentioned that y'all maybe sort of had crossed paths at some point
Sure.
before he got here.
Yeah.
What did you know about him at the time, and could you maybe see that, he was a coach who's maybe a little bit on the rise because he's gone from so fast from high school to college and
Yeah,
NFL in between?
So when I was at Kentucky, I used to run into him recruiting his school at DeSmet. And the one thing you saw there was a highly organized guy that was a great teacher, did a great job motivating kids, and then followed up, built a relationship with him, just kind of hanging out in his office and talking and enjoying that, and then trading texts, and then later on he ends up at the Vikings, playing him in the preseason. So although a short background, kind of a fruitful one.
How much of the defense have you gotten in?
We're starting to, what we're trying to do in spring ball, to be honest with you, is we're trying to install concepts. All right, we're not trying to put our whole defense in. That's not what we're trying to get good at certain things. And then for us as coaches, it's a measurement as to how much volume we can carry when we get into fall camp. So, I would say that it's kind of a moving target. We got a lot to clean up yet.
When we talked to all the coaches in the stadium, teaching was a big theme. Frank even ensured that we remembered he was a science teacher at one point. Do you feel like that's a real root to this coaching staff, is their ability to want to communicate that information in a way that the guys understand? And kind of get back to my original question with you, is it different at this level, getting through to kids?
Yeah, I think to a degree. The thing about this level that's different than the other level is that's their job, right? And at this level, these guys are managing a bunch of different things. But at the end of the day, when you get them in the building, yes, teaching a concept is the exact same thing in the fact of there's a bunch of different learning styles. And if you expect them to get it on the field, you can't just verbally talk about it. You can't just write it on the board. You can't just have it repetition back and forth. You can't just show it on the film. You got to walk it, chalk it, drill it, and do it again. And that part doesn't change. But I do think the audience changes. Does that make sense?
Coach, I was curious, as earlier you were talking about how sort of structured Kelly is with his long-term plan, his short-term plan, a plan practice, and then how does he sort of make you guys feel comfortable in terms of having your own suggestions when it comes to your own sort of ideas of maybe alterations to the plan or
Yeah,
whatnot?
I mean, and I don't mean he's so rigid that you don't get a framework of your plan on offense, defense. He's just laying out the vision, right? And then laying out the details of how he wants to go about it as a football team. But Coach, his door is always open. He's extremely open-minded. He comes down to the defensive meeting room all the time. And if you have a suggestion, he's obviously fires it. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to take everyone. He can't, because he probably gets a million of them a day. But he definitely is a listener and then has a great plan. Thanks, guys.